Another thing that happened in the NFL recently is that Dak Prescott, the Cowboys star quarterback, signed his $31 million franchise tag. He signed that franchise tag after turning down an historic 5-year, $175 million deal with over $100 million in guaranteed. And that would pay him about $35 million annually. Some Cowboys fans are displeased because Dak Prescott is only a 4th-round pick. He never got paid real quarterback money, and Dak Prescott is their cornerstone for their franchise. But if I was a Cowboys fan, I'd be glad Dak didn't sign that team-destroying contract. I think Dak's mistake saved the Dallas Cowboys, and I'll explain why. For transparency, I'll explain what makes a quarterback great. In other words, a quarterback worth more than $32 million. So, a great quarterback, or elite quarterback, is a quarterback who elevates his teammates around him, and his team in general is greater just by his presence. So regarding Dak Prescott's case, I'd like to go back to the 2017-2018 season. So during that season, Ezekiel Elliott, the Cowboys star running back, one of the best running backs in the league, suffered a 6-game suspension for violating league policy. From week 10 to week 15 of that year, Ezekiel Elliott served his suspension. Even without Ezekiel Elliott, the Cowboys had the best offensive line in the league, a prime Des Bryant, Cole Beasley, a solid slot receiver, a younger Jason Witten, and Alfred Morris was a legit running back backup at the time. So we can say that Dak had a more than an okay supporting cast without Zeke. So by week 10 of that season, the Cowboys were 5-3, contending for a playoff spot. Let's see how Dak led his teammates in this crucial stretch of games. So on week 10, they faced the Atlanta Falcons, who were a wild card team that year, and they finished 10-6. They got blown out 27-7. Dak's stats were 176 yards, 0 touchdowns, and 0 interceptions. You might say just a fluke game, maybe just Dak has to get used to not being without a star running back. You know what? If it's just one game, I'm okay with that. So the next week, they faced the Philadelphia Eagles, the Super Bowl champions of that year. And they got blown out 37-9. Dak's stats were 145 yards, 0 touchdowns, and 3 interceptions. A pretty bad performance to say the least. Let's go to the next week. So they faced the Los Angeles Chargers, who didn't make the playoffs that year. They finished 9-7, and they got blown out 28-6. Dak Prescott's stats were 179 yards, 0 touchdowns, and 2 interceptions. Also a bad game by the Cowboys star quarterback. So next week, they broke the losing streak. They faced the Washington Redskins. Yeah, they were the Redskins at the time, not the Washington football team. The Redskins finished 7-9 that year, and the Cowboys smoked the Redskins 38-14. And regarding the Redskins game, some of you might think, hey Moses, the Cowboys smoked the Redskins without Zeke. Dak Prescott can elevate his team, and you're wrong. So this is my counter argument regarding that game. Dak's stats that game were 102 yards and 2 interceptions. We're not in the 1940s. Quarterbacks don't throw for 100 yards a game anymore. Number 2, it helps when your running back runs for more than 120 yards, averaging almost 5 yards per carry. Number 3, it helps when your defense holds your opponent to 14 points and forces 4 turnovers. And 4, the Redskins weren't good that year. They finished 7-9, and they were pretty dysfunctional. So in conclusion, Dak's impact on that game was insignificant. So let's move on to week 14. They faced the worst team in the league that year, the New York Giants, the Eli Manning-led New York Giants, and of course the Dallas Cowboys won 30-10, but you gotta remember, was against the dysfunctional Eli Manning-led Giants. And the last game without Ezekiel Elliott, they faced the Oakland Raiders. The Raiders finished 6-10 that season, and the Cowboys barely won 20-17. Derek Carr, the Raiders quarterback, fumbled the ball on the 1-yard line with 31 seconds left in the game. If Derek Carr scores, the Cowboys just lose to a bad Raiders team. And looking at Dak's stats, 212 yards and 2 interceptions, the Cowboys didn't win because of Dak Prescott. He pulled them down, to be honest. So the Cowboys finished that stretch of games 3-3. And being blown out by every team with a positive record. The Cowboys ultimately finished 9-7 that year and missed the playoffs. In comparison, a fellow division quarterback, Carson Wentz, the Eagles quarterback, led an injury-riddled Eagles team to the playoffs over Dak Prescott and a stacked Dallas Cowboys team. Went through that stretch, was literally throwing to converted quarterbacks to wide receiver. Talk about an underdog. And of course, I can talk about the 2018 offensive struggles before acquiring Amari Cooper, or not being able to beat the team over 500 last year with a stacked roster. But to me, this stretch of games in the 2017-2018 season proves to me that Dak can't elevate his team by himself, and he can be competitive without an elite supporting cast. If Dak Prescott signs that contract and gets paid $35 million a year, the Cowboys front office wouldn't be able to keep such a good supporting cast around Dak Prescott, and the team will just fall into mediocrity or worse. So that's why Dak Prescott isn't worth that much money. Cowboys fans and their front office should consider themselves lucky that Dak didn't sign that contract.